Hello, Mindset Recovery friends. This is Roberto. So, as I said in my last video, um, I I had to reset my clean time because I decided to drink a beer 5 months ago. I don't believe I've lost my recovery because I haven't gotten high or drunk. But if you are involved in NA, one is too many and 1,000 is never enough. So even though I didn't think it was a big deal, I talked to my sponsor about it, was honest because that's what the program is all about. And my secrets would keep me sick. So I didn't want to tell him. I went in eyes wide open. I decided I was going to drink a beer. I figured I could do it. I figured I could handle it. And so I knew nobody would know. And so I wasn't going to tell anyone. But I have conscious contact with my higher power today as a result of being in the program and working steps. And my higher power let me know in no uncertain terms that being silent about that was, a slippery slope. It might have been one that time, but if I get away with it and I don't say anything, the chances are next time it'll be two. And from my own experience in addiction, I know that 3 beers does something to my head where I'm off and running. So my sponsor said that he felt like I didn't lose my recovery, but that, the definition of clean is no mind altering, mood altering substances in my system. And so since I drank a beer, I was no longer clean and I had to pick up another white chip. So obviously I wasn't happy about it, but what I've learned in this program is that, my sponsor's got 11 years, so he has a lot more experience than I do, and he's not going to steer me wrong. And, so, for me, there's levels of slips, but I am also not Mr. NA. So, I don't know if my sponsor is Mr. NA, but he is to me. So, my recommendation is, brutally honest with a sponsor that's got at least a year clean, has worked the steps, has a sponsor. And, if you got somebody with experience, they will help you make decisions when your brain is trying to get you to do shady stuff. So, I still believe that I have, 1.7 years of recovery. I know I'm progressing in this program. I'm continuing to work steps. He didn't say that it was necessary for me to start over on my steps. So I am finishing up my 6th step with him. I've worked the steps in another program that I was in, but there's just something about NA working the steps in the flat book. It's unparalleled in my opinion. I think that it helped me to work the steps in the other program because I came to this program with some experience and already having dealt with some of my resentments and a pretty good idea of my character defects. But the NA program is, the flat book is no joke. It's very intense. There's like, I don't know, 60 some questions in step one. And I made up my mind that I was going to work this program and do it the way my sponsor suggested. And he had me get notebooks and I'm filling them up. You do a lot of writing when you work the steps. But my experience with the steps is that, especially in NA, you go deep, you go inside with another person and you find out the things that are driving your addiction and you deal with them in a safe environment with somebody who can help you make sense of them. And if you have a sponsor with experience like I do, some of the things that I did, he had personal experience with. So, I had a lot of guilt and shame that was driving my addiction in this program. I was ashamed of my behavior in the past and present when I first started getting clean. And, I used drugs to not feel, and I didn't want to feel bad about myself. And when I was loaded, I didn't feel bad about myself. Unfortunately, when the drugs wore off, then all that shame and guilt came back, and it was compounded by the fact that I didn't want to use. I knew I needed to stop. I almost died in 2019 from a stroke as a direct use of using drugs and alcohol for 35 years, going for broke, trying to do as much as I could. And, I knew that if I didn't stop, I was going to die. But when I got to that point, the problem is I didn't know how to stay clean. And I think that if you are using against your will, like I was, and you can't stop, then obviously you don't know how to stay clean. And that's what a sponsor did for me. He taught me how to not get high. And then all the feelings that I had been hiding for 35 years and the emotions that I didn't like that I was putting drugs on to make go away, it was raw. So I had to learn to deal with those things. So that is what being in a program like Narcotics Anonymous or any 12-step program that has you deal with those things with 12 steps. I saw a meme the other day that said no matter how far down you are, you're only 12 steps away from getting out. And I mean, that sounds cliche and silly and all that. But I mean, the steps ain't no joke. That's why they say work the steps, because it's work. This is a simple program, but it's not an easy program. And so some people in the program, not comparing myself to them as far as how good I am or how bad I am, but I know people that aren't working the steps consistently seem to be struggling harder than I have struggled. And that's because I have made it a priority to work steps. And I might not, my sponsor told me it's a marathon, not a sprint. So I'm not breaking out the flat book and working on it every day and trying to get a step done so that I can be done with it. Because what I know from being in here, from other people's experiences, that this is a lifelong process. And, my sponsor finishes the steps and then he starts them over again. And it's new stuff that you deal with because, when I started working the steps this time on step one, I was dealing with drugs. Drugs were a power greater than me and they were making my life unmanageable. Well, now 6 months later, I don't use drugs anymore. I don't have the desire to use drugs anymore, but I've still got stuff that I got to go back and deal with from my past. And, the 10th step is keeping your side of the street clean now. So, maybe I was a tool. Maybe I, whatever, cut somebody off in traffic or flipped them off or was rude to my son. I mean, I'm not saying that happened, but these are examples of things that maybe even clean I still do. Well, I need to deal with that regularly because in a fourth step, I have a list of people that I have harmed. And, if I'm working a 10th step on a daily basis and making it right, figuring out my part in the situation, because sometimes there's more than one part to it, but I can't do somebody else's inventory. I can't do my inventory by saying, well, this is what they did to piss me off. I have to say, I reacted in this way and that was inappropriate or whatever the situation may be. And then I keep my side of the street clean so that when I get back to the fourth step, I don't have 50 people on it or whatever. I can't remember how many I had, but there was a bunch. So, if I keep doing it over and over again, then you know, I can keep myself in a place where I'm not doing grimy stuff. So I'm not feeling guilt and shame. And then I don't use to cover up those negative feelings. And I'm also learning about the patterns of behavior that I'm doing over and over again that are causing my problems because that's what was glaringly obvious to me in the fourth step. When I get to, what was driving that behavior, a lot of those different situations had the same behavior that were driving them. And so I learned what my character defects are. And now in the sixth step, I'm going on a deep dive into those character defects. I'm learning how they negatively impacted my life and others, and how my life will be different if I am not acting out on those character defects. And then, in the seventh step, I don't know, I haven't gotten there yet, but, I'm in the sixth step, I'm becoming willing to have God remove these defects of character. So I'm learning about them. I'm learning how they negatively impact me and other people. I'm learning how my life would be if I don't have to deal with them anymore. And then I become willing to have them removed because I see the benefits of having them removed. And then the seventh step, I humbly ask my higher power to remove those because it's not possible for me to remove them. So I'm becoming aware of them and how they affect me. And then I have to be humble and ask my higher power to remove them from me. And what's been explained to me in the literature and by my sponsor is that character defects are natural instincts that I have that have gone awry. So maybe, it's a healthy instinct to want to have sex because, human beings were designed to procreate and continue the human race. So if you don't have a desire to have sex, then you're not going to be able to have children, and eventually all human life will disappear from the planet. However, if my sex instinct has gotten out of whack, now it becomes a character defect because, who knows if I'm, having sex with people I shouldn't be, or paying money, or whatever it is I'm doing, or having sex to make me feel good about myself, which is what my personal situation was. People were harmed in that process because I wasn't worried about other people. It was selfishly motivated. So I'm finding out that my character defects are natural instincts that have gone awry because of my selfishness in my life. So this program is helping me to be others focused so I'm not so selfish. And it's a process and it continues. So the character defects might never go away, but it talks about in the 12 steps, it says have my shortcomings removed. So, I've talked about this before, but a character defect might not go away, but my character defect might be outbursts of anger. But acting out on that character defect is a shortcoming. So I've said it before and I've heard it said. So a character defect would be like if I walk out to my car and I see that it has a flat tire. But a shortcoming would be if I say, well, I'm not going to change the tire, I'm going to drive on it anyway. So I can't have the character defect removed necessarily, but I can learn to not act out on it. So if I walk out and I see that my car has a flat tire, well, what can I do to fix that? Well, if I will be willing to take the time and be patient, even though it might be a pain in the butt, I can change the tire or use fix a flat or call someone to come help me. But I mean, I don't just drive on it. So I learn how to act differently today. And that's what the program promises, a new way to live. And so, I don't have to be a jerk to people. I don't have to be a smart aleck and be, I've always been sarcastic with people to kind of make myself feel better about myself because, I have a pride problem and consider myself to be fairly intelligent. So it made me feel good about myself and smarter to talk down to people and you know, be sarcastic and make them feel dumb about themselves so I could feel better about myself. Well, I might still struggle with pride because, I think that that is the root of a lot of character defects is pride, thinking I'm better than other people. But I can stop acting out on that character defect and not make people feel bad about themselves and, ask for God to remove that from me. And hopefully over time, my situation will get better with my pride. I'll learn some humility, which is the opposite of pride. And, like I said, it's an ongoing process because, I'm a sick person. I have issues in my life. But if I'm not aware of what those issues are, I don't know where to begin to deal with them. And I may not even recognize them when they rear their ugly head. So, this is a program that helps me be a better person. It helps me with character development. It makes other people around me's lives better by not having to deal with somebody who's, acting out on all these character defects. And, some of them I made, maybe when I get down the road and I'm doing my step work for the third or fourth or fifth time, I notice that I'm not acting out on some of them. And then I notice that maybe in some of them I'm acting out in a different way, and I can attack that problem. And that's another good thing about having a sponsor and people in the program, because they're my eyes and ears. And I might be doing something, denial is believing that a lie is true. So like I have people that I work with in the program that are doing the same thing over and over again, and they're trying to convince me that it's okay. And I see that it's an issue, and maybe I can point that out to them in a loving way and help them deal with it. And they may or may not see it, but it's easy to see my faults in other people. I've noticed that. And I think for most people, we can notice when somebody else is doing something that's wrong. But a lot of times we might be doing it too, and we don't see it when we do it. My whole thing was, it used to really piss me off when people would park in a handicap spot or in a fire lane at a grocery store and go inside. But then sometimes maybe I was in a hurry, and so it was okay in my mind for me to do exactly what I get pissed off at other people for doing because I have an excuse. Well, that's bull. If it's not okay to park in a fire lane, if you're not a fire truck, it's not okay for me to do it because I have a better reason than you. And then, especially for me to judge you because you're doing it and talk smack either to you or under my breath or to other people. And so I learned to be a better person through this program and just be like, you know what? I don't, I'm not in that big of a hurry. It's not cool to do that. Is it cool to lie? No. If somebody else lies to me and I find out, I get upset about it. But then I have an excuse why it's okay for me to lie to you. Well, that's just how all people are. We always can find a way to justify our behavior, but when it comes to another person, we want justice. But when it comes to us, we want mercy. And so that is something that I am learning to deal with through this program. So I'm thankful that today I don't have a desire to use drugs. I'm learning to be others focused because, it's a selfish disease. So if all I'm thinking about is myself, I either get caught up in self pity because, oh, woe is me, all these horrible things are happening to me, or why me, or why is God doing this to me? Instead of, hey, guess what? Things just happen. I heard a speaker at the NA convention a couple weeks ago say that she was mad at God because why is God letting these things happen to me? And she had to realize that, maybe God wasn't the one that was doing it to her. Things were happening, and what God does is help you get through it. And that's perspective, and that's what this program teaches me. Perspective, looking at things a different way. And that's why they call it work. They say it works when you work it. Well, yeah, you got to work at it. You have to participate in the program. You have to go to meetings. You have to do prayer and meditation to increase your conscious contact with your higher power, which is basically speaks to me through my conscience and says, yeah, you know what? Maybe you should do that. Maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe you don't want to do it, but maybe you should do it because it's the right thing to do. And before I was so selfish that I didn't care whether it was the right thing to do. What am I getting out of it? And so my character is developing through this process. So I am grateful that I am, NA says clean time. I had to reset my clean time. So yeah, it's important that I go back and pick up my white chip and work my way back up. My sponsor said because I had 15 months when I drank my beer, that it's normal for people to kind of be butthurt over that until they get to the point where they pick up that clean time. So he said it'll probably be when I pick up my 18 months clean that I'll stop being so resentful about the fact that I had to go back and pick up a white chip. But that's just anger with myself because, that was a decision that I made. I don't have a desire to use today. but I justified that it was okay for me to drink a beer because I wasn't going to get drunk and nobody would know and blah, blah, blah. And that justification is one of the ways that I act out on my character defects by making my behavior okay in my mind, even though it's not. So, if you are interested in talking to somebody about this, you can always go online and find an NA meeting. They have online meetings. They have, schedules for meetings in your area. NA is worldwide. You can always send me an email. My email address is paster67@hotmail.com. That's P as in Paul, IA, S as in Sam, T as in tornado, ER67@hotmail.com. If you send me an email and you put mindset recovery or something of that nature in the subject line, I will try to help you get the information that you need, get you connected with resources. I am not a sponsor. I'm not going to sponsor people that see my videos. In the NA program, they suggest that you have a year clean. So, I've got 5 months clean. Maybe I know more than somebody who's got 30 days from my personal experience. But my suggestion is to find somebody in a meeting that's got at least a year of recovery and experience working the 12 steps, lives this program, has a sponsor who has a sponsor. Those are the people that are going to steer you in the right direction. So, have a good day, and hope you stay clean. But just know, if this program worked for me, I got high for 35 years, and I don't want to get high anymore. The only promise NA makes is that an addict, any addict, can lose the desire to use and find a new way to live. And I know that, I tried it for 35 years, half-assing it, and, half measures avail us nothing. But when I submerged myself in this program, followed suggestions, and worked the steps and worked the things that are on the back of the meeting schedule that I suggested, I haven't felt the desire to get high in getting close to 2 years. So this is Roberto signing off. Have a great day.